Thanks, Frank.
John, you just said that Iran was not going to do this for nothing, but didn't they also get 5 Iranians?
They will get 5 Iranians as well, yeah, Jackie.
Then why did we need to add $6 billion on top of that?
This is the deal that we were able to strike to secure the release of 5 Americans. It would be great, wonderful, if we could just pick up the phone and call the mullahs and say, hey, we want our Americans back, send them back on the next plane. But you and I both know that's not going to happen, particularly with Iran. And getting Americans home requires decisions, sometimes really tough decisions. It requires compromise. It requires negotiations. It requires negotiations with people you really would rather not be sitting across the table from, but you got to do it. Because Americans overseas in trouble, wrongfully detained, need to know, and their families need to know, that this president and this administration will do what it takes to bring them home. We're comfortable in the parameters of this deal. I've heard the critics, that somehow they're getting the better end of it. Ask the families of those 5 Americans who's getting the better end of it, and I think you'd get a different answer. We're comfortable with the parameters of this deal. We're comfortable that there'll be enough restrictions, quite frankly, very rigid restrictions, on the Iranians' ability to use this money. And we make no apologies for the fact that we're going to get these 5 Americans home just as soon as possible.
President Raisi says it's up to them how they use the money.
He's wrong.
How are you going to guarantee that? Because once the money's fungible. So once it's released.
No, man. It's not fungible. He's just wrong. He's just flat out wrong. The way this deal is arranged is that the $6 billion, which is Iranian money, will go to a Qatari bank, Qatari National Bank. The Iranians can request withdrawals for it for humanitarian purposes, and the Qataris and us, we will have oversight, sufficient oversight, into the request itself to validate the request, and then to deliver funds appropriate to that request. The money will then go to qualified vendors to purchase and deliver the food, the medical supplies, into Iran. So it will go directly to aid organizations or appropriate relevant organizations inside Iran so that the Iranian people can benefit from it. And that's an important point too. While we certainly have issues with the regime, we don't have issues with the Iranian people. And this funding will be important to helping them get over some tough times.
What do you say to the criticism that this is only going to go against all of these efforts to deter Iran from getting a nuclear weapon? I mean, this came right after the IAEA director said that the international community is losing interest in holding Iran accountable, that these violations are routine, and now we're making this deal where they're going to have money to use for humanitarian purposes, but to Peter's point, freeing up $6 billion that they can pull from other places to use for proxy attacks or building a nuclear weapon. How do you argue against that?
I think I answered that question before, but I'll try it another way. We'll continue to hold them accountable for destabilizing activities. This arrangement to get these Americans home is separate and distinct from the way we are holding Iran accountable for all their destabilizing activities, to include their continued nuclear ambitions and their burgeoning and improving ballistic missile program, which we have sanctioned and will continue to keep those sanctions in place. As I said, no sanctions relief involved in this at all. We will continue to hold them and put them under that pressure. And now look, the President has said many, many times, we're not going to allow Iran to ever achieve a nuclear weapons capability. We would have preferred to deal with that through diplomacy. Unfortunately, the previous administration decided to tear up a deal that had actually set their ambitions back by many, many months, and now they've been allowed to continue to re-enrich. Nothing we can do about that. We wanted to solve it through diplomacy. We are not able, and we're not focused on returning to the JCPOA at this time. That said, we will make sure we have the appropriate capabilities in the region to defend ourselves and our national security interests if it comes to that.
We got to keep going.